Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much. The Titans for Life are really, really pleased to have a guest speaker, to have our first annual Holy Trinity Pro-Life Day. We are really fortunate to have students from Loyola here as well, so it's not just our school, but other schools that would like to hear the pro-life message. Our speaker today is Stephanie Gray, who's an awesome speaker, has a lot of great information to share with us. She's the president and co-founder of the Canadian Centre for Bioethic Reform. Okay, so we're trying to change things. Guys, it's up to you to change the world and make it a better place. So Stephanie's going to give us some good ways to try to do that. Stephanie?
Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good. It is great to be here. I wanted to begin by asking you a question, and that is, if you were to think for a moment about who inspires you, who has an ability to have a positive or elevating influence on how you think or how you feel? Who inspires you and why? Did someone have an answer? Yes?
My mom inspires me.
Your mom inspires you, and why? Okay, she helps you to make good choices. Is it easy to help you make good choices for her, do you think?
No.
So sometimes it's a little challenging. Okay, very good. So who inspires you? From people you know, like your mom, or people who've lived in the history of the world, or characters in books you've read or movies you've watched, who inspires you? Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
My religion teacher.
Your religion teacher, and why? All right. So, and you think it's very easy for him to teach you all these things, or are you difficult sometimes? You're an easy student and your teacher's shaking his head. All right. Anyone else who inspires you and why? Go ahead.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. And why does Harry Potter inspire you? His life sucked and he made it better. Sure, and he saved the world. All right. All right. Good answers. Okay, I'm going to share with you guys a few people who inspire me, starting with this guy, Nick Vujicic. Anyone familiar with him? As you can see, he doesn't have arms and legs. And he actually is a motivational speaker that travels the world inspiring people, giving them hope that no matter what kind of obstacles they face, they can always turn them into opportunities and they can rise above their hardships. And I was privileged to spend an afternoon with him with my colleagues a couple of years ago when he came to speak in Calgary, because he knows someone who I know. And so I asked the person I know to see if they could arrange the meeting, and he was supposed to hang out with us for an hour, and I like to say we're so much fun, he stayed for 3. So anyways, Nick is a very inspiring person with the hope and attitude that he has even amidst his hardships. Also, this woman inspires me. Her name is Irena Sendler, and she was a Catholic social worker who lived during the Second World War in Poland. And she, as a social worker, was able to go into the Warsaw Ghetto where Jewish people were being held and ultimately they would be taken to concentration camps. And she used her position and she used her influence as a social worker to make her way into the ghetto. But once she was on the inside of the ghetto, she worked out an elaborate plan to help children leave the ghetto and escape, and she placed those children in homes where they would be kept hidden from the Nazis during the war. Eventually, Irena was caught for what she was doing. She was arrested, she was tortured, and she was almost executed. And only because one of her friends bribed a guard was she let free. At the end of the war, most of the parents of those children that had been hidden were killed. But 2,500 children were alive as the result of Irena Sendler's efforts. And then I'm inspired by Jesus. Just a few days ago, during the Holy Triduum and Easter, we recall just how much he suffered, was scourged, tortured, abandoned, and crucified so that our sins could be forgiven. As I have traveled the world speaking to people, I have been finding over the past couple of years I've been finding myself asking more and more individuals who inspires them and why. And as I have gotten answers from people, it's become clear to me that although we often have different answers for who, be it our moms, our religion teachers, Harry Potter, or Nick, Irena, or Jesus, there seems to be a common answer for why. It seems that people who inspire us face hardship, suffering, difficulty, and what sets apart those who inspire from those who do not is how they respond to their hardship. They don't give up. They rise above. They turn that obstacle into an opportunity. They are more focused on someone else than themselves. In other words, they're selfless instead of selfish. Inspiring people do the right thing no matter how hard it is. And I bring that up because when it comes to the issue of abortion that I'm here to talk about today, the pro-life message that someone who faces an unplanned pregnancy should carry their pregnancy to term is not an easy message to accept. It's a very difficult belief to actually live out. Why? Because the circumstances of an unplanned pregnancy can be very, very hard. And whether someone supports abortion or opposes abortion, both sides of the debate can agree that difficult life circumstances exist. The question is it right to have an abortion to deal with the hardship that we're in? So let me ask you to help me please brainstorm. What are some of the difficult circumstances that a pregnant girl could be in that would result in some people saying, this is why we need abortion? Yes, go ahead. Poverty, if she just can't afford her child. What's another circumstance? No support. Age, maybe too young. Yes? Rape. What other circumstances exist? Yes? Sickness. Maybe the child's disabled, maybe she's sick. Yes, go ahead. Parental pressure. So not only no support, but active pressure to have the abortion. And if we look at these many varied circumstances, we can indeed acknowledge it would be hard to be pregnant from rape. It would be hard to be pregnant and poor. It would be hard to be pregnant and young. But as you look at all those circumstances, I'd like you to imagine for a moment that we're not dealing with a pregnant person in one of these situations, but rather we're dealing with the mother of an infant. Would it be hard to raise the child pictured here and be poor? Yes. Would it be easy or hard to raise the child pictured here, knowing that child was conceived in rape, and looking in the face of that child every day and being reminded of your rapist? Easy or hard? Hard. Would it be easy or hard to raise that child and be a young mom with no support from your family? Hard. Now, would we ever allow that mom or anyone to kill the infant pictured here because the circumstances are hard? And if we say no, then we have to ask ourselves, why would we ever allow someone to kill the preborn child pictured here? Because the circumstances are hard. Now someone may say, well, the difference is the embryo you just put up on the screen isn't a living human the way the infant is. So we can't kill infants just because we're in difficult circumstances, but that's why it's okay to terminate a pregnancy. And so what that kind of response shows us is what we need to figure out in the abortion debate is whether the preborn child, as an embryo or a fetus, is a living human the way an infant is. Because if so, then just as we wouldn't let hardship be grounds to kill the infant, we mustn't let hardship be grounds to kill the preborn child. Let me give you a specific example. Take the situation of rape. Let's say you've got a married woman who has consensual sex with her husband on Monday. And then on Tuesday, when she's walking home from work late at night, she's raped. 1 month later, she discovers that she's pregnant. And she doesn't know who the father of her child is. It could be her husband, but it could be the rapist. So let's say she hopes it's her husband's child, and she carries on with the pregnancy. After the baby is born, the doctors do a paternity test, and the results come back and reveal that the father of her child is not her husband, but it's the rapist. Would we allow that woman or anyone to kill the newborn child because of the father's crime? And if we say no, again we have to ask, why kill the preborn child? Because of the father's crime. And again, if someone says there's a difference, you're comparing apples to oranges, fetuses aren't people, then the real question is that correct? Are they people or are they not? And so this morning what I want to do is equip you to be able to make a winsome defense for the pro-life view. To go through the science for how the preborn are alive and how they're human. And then you could say maybe have a bit of what we call a philosophical discussion for how the preborn are people. And then a discussion about what is abortion. And then I'll open it up to questions if we have time. And if we don't have time, then there'll be another session today where there'll be a question and answer period. So let's get then to the first question of, are the preborn alive? Are they human? And to answer that, I want you to think about the following three statements. If something is growing, isn't it alive? And if something has human parents, isn't it reasonable to conclude that that something would be human offspring? And we humans are valuable, aren't we? So let's start with that last statement, and I'll unpack it as we work our way back. We humans are valuable, aren't we? Let's take this teenager here, and let's say it's go to work with your parent day. And let's say that her father worked at what was the World Trade Center in New York. And let's say it's September 11th, 2001. Who can tell me what happened on 9/11? Yes? That's right, the planes crashed, the World Trade Center was destroyed, and thousands of people were killed. So it's September 11th, 2001, this teenager goes to work with her dad, the planes crash in, the buildings implode, and she dies. Would that be a tragedy? Yes. Why? Because humans are valuable, right? Well, let's say she doesn't go to work with her dad as a teenager, but rather as a toddler. And September 11th, 2001, she goes to work with her dad, the planes crash in, the building implodes, she's killed. Tragedy? Yes. Why? Because humans are valuable. Well, let's say she doesn't go to work with her parent that day, but rather there's a daycare center at the World Trade Center, and as an infant, her mother drops her off at the daycare center. The planes crash in, the building implodes, the infant is killed. Tragedy? Yes. Why? Well, because humans are valuable. Well, let's say she goes to the World Trade Center not as an infant, but rather as a fetus. In the womb of her mother who's going to work, the planes crash in, the building implodes, the fetus dies. Tragedy? If the fetus is human. Why? Because humans are valuable. Well, what if she goes into the World Trade Center not as a fetus, but rather as an embryo in the fallopian tube of her mother, recently conceived? It's September 11th, 2001, the planes crash, the building implodes, the embryo dies. Tragedy? If the embryo is human. Because humans are valuable. So the question is the embryo and is the fetus a human, like the infant, toddler, and teenager? Now, some people might say, well, no, it's not, because even the word embryo or fetus implies it's not human. And anyone who says that is actually making an inaccurate statement, because embryo and fetus actually don't tell us what something is, they tell us how old something is. So do you know, for example, that at fertilization or conception, you aren't a fetus, or you weren't a fetus, and at birth, you weren't an embryo? Because embryo and fetus refer to age ranges. So you're an embryo from the beginning of your life at fertilization to the end of 8 weeks. And then you're called a fetus from the beginning of 9 weeks to the point of birth. And then you're called an infant, and then you're called a toddler, and then you're called a teenager. So these are labels that refer to an age range. So if we want to know whether the embryo and the fetus pictured here are human, we need to get to the second statement that I had made a few moments ago. And that is, if you have human parents, it's reasonable to conclude you're human offspring. And so since that embryo and fetus have human parents, the embryo and fetus are human. And since humans are valuable, if abortion kills them, it's wrong. Now that first statement I made was that if something is growing, it's alive. And at fertilization, when you have the one-cell embryo, the one cell becomes 2, and then 4, and then 8, and so on. The embryo is growing. Therefore, the embryo is alive. So even in the tiniest of individuals, in human reproduction, we have a living human being at fertilization. Now, sometimes people have a hard time wrapping their minds around the idea that we come into existence in an instant. That, at fertilization, suddenly who we are today was captured in that moment. It's hard to imagine that. Instead, some people say, well, maybe you come into existence when you have a heartbeat, which is 21 days. Or maybe it's brainwaves, which have been detected at 6 weeks. Or maybe it's the ability to feel pain. Maybe we need certain parts onto us and abilities onto us before we're really us. And people who make that point, whether they realize it or not, are coming from the perspective that we humans are the kind of thing which is constructed, where there's something putting parts on us to create the end product. But we humans aren't the kind of thing which is constructed, but rather we're the kind of thing which develops. And I'm going to explain that with the following illustrations. What am I holding up here? I hear Mr. Potato. Now, is this actually Mr. Potato? How many of you think this is Mr. Potato? Okay, we've got a couple hands up. How many of you think this is a potato, albeit a fake one? More hands up. So at what point does this potato become Mr. Potato Head? Does it need the arm? How many of you think it's Mr. Potato Head now? Maybe it needs 2 arms. Maybe it needs a face. Maybe it needs its feet. How many say this is Mr. Potato Head? Or actually, looks like Mrs. Or do we need a hat on? And see, when you come from the idea that humans are constructed, you come from the idea that we're almost like Mr. Potato Head, where there's parts going on, and we may not know if it's just the arm that's needed, or both arms, or the feet, or the face, but we all know at the end product we have a Mr. Potato Head. But we humans are the kind of thing, not which is constructed like a Mr. Potato Head, but we're the kind of thing which develops like a Polaroid picture. Now, who can tell me at a basic level how a Polaroid camera works? What do you do? How is it different from other cameras? Yes? Right. Very good. So you take the photo, the paper comes out, which I'm holding here, although this is already a developed photo. So the paper comes out, and then if you're impatient, maybe you'll shake it around and eventually the image will appear. Well, I want you to imagine that you go on vacation, and you plan to document your vacation with your trusty Polaroid camera. So you can have your photos right away and put them in your photo album right away. So let's say that you're going to a very beautiful place that I think is one of the coolest places in the world. You go to Scotland. That's right, because my dad's from Scotland. He's got a great Scottish accent. So you go to Scotland to a very famous place known as Loch Ness. Now, it's in Loch Ness. Go ahead. That's right, the Loch Ness Monster. My grandma who couldn't see her hand in front of her face swears she saw the Loch Ness Monster at a distance. So a lot of people think the Loch Ness Monster is in the lake, right? So let's say you're on Loch Ness in a boat, Loch meaning lake, and you're on a scenic tour of the area, and you're snapping photos of the beautiful scenery with your Polaroid camera, and as you turn to your left, you see none other than the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, all those humps and bumps are sticking out of the water. So you point your camera in that direction, you snap a photo, the little card comes out, and just as that happens, Nessie goes underwater. Well, you're not worried, because you know, holding this card in your hand, that you have the visual proof to show the world that what many thought was a myth actually is reality. And so let's say you're in the boat with a friend of yours who has never seen a Polaroid camera before and doesn't know how the camera works. And so excitedly, she grabs the photo from you to look, but because she doesn't know how it works, all she sees are those initial brown-black smudges and thinks the photo didn't take. So with great disappointment, she rips it and tosses it in the lake. Would you be upset? I know, I would be, right? So imagine if in getting angry at your friend responded, "But it's just brown smudges. What do you care about brown smudges for?" And you'd likely reply, "It wasn't just brown smudges. Everything about the image of the Loch Ness Monster was captured in an instant. It just needed time to develop." And the same can be said about who each one of us is today, let's say at the teenager stage. That who you are today was captured in that instant of fertilization. You just need time to develop. We humans, therefore, are not like Mr. Potato Head or Mrs. Potato Head, the kind of thing which is constructed, but rather we humans are like a Polaroid picture, the kind of thing which develops. And the final point to reinforce that is to look at this. I've got all the parts of Mrs. Potato Head laid out on the table. Let's imagine that I just snapped a photo with my Polaroid camera, and I lay the card on the table, and I step back and we watch. Is anything going to happen with the parts of Mrs. Potato Head? No. Now, is anything going to happen with that picture? Yes. It's going to continue to develop. So a constructed thing needs an external force like me putting parts onto it. But a developing thing has an internal force directing its own growth. And preborn children are developing kind of things, the way you and I are developing kind of things. The preborn is not a potential human, but a human with great potential. In the same way, the infant and the toddler and the teenager pictured here are not potential humans, but humans with great potential. Now, having said that, sometimes people will say, well, okay, well, even if the preborn are alive and they're human, and I know humans are valuable, maybe abortion's okay because they're pretty different from us in some significant ways. And maybe those differences justify us allowing abortion where we would never kill infants. Well, let's look at an embryo in contrast to an infant and ask ourselves, are there any differences? And yes, we can agree there are. The question is not, do the differences exist, but do the differences matter when it comes to our value? So, for example, there is a difference of size. Indeed, the embryo is smaller than the infant. Or development. The embryo is less developed physically and mentally. There's also an environment difference, right? The embryo is in the mother's body and the infant is outside. Or there's dependency. The embryo needs the mother's body in a way the infant does not. Should our right to life be based on some or all of those differences? I'd like you to look at the infant pictured there in contrast to the teenager. And as you look at those two pictures, ask yourself, well, are there differences between infants and teenagers? And of course there are. In fact, it's the same 4 differences. In a moment, I'm going to put up some very entertaining pictures from a parenting book. It's called The Do's and Don'ts of Parenting, showing you in visual form what you should or shouldn't do with your children. And I'm going to put these pictures up because I think they reinforce this SLED acronym, that our right to life should not be based on these differences. So here's the first one. And as you can see here, you can't exercise your child in a certain way because of the little child's size. May we kill the child who can't exercise like her father? Of course not. And neither should we kill the preborn just because they're smaller than the born. Or take a developmental difference. There are some born kids who, because of their lack of developmental level with their brains, they can't play a good game of chess yet. But does that mean we can kill them, right? Well, in the same way, the preborn are less developed than the born, but that doesn't mean we should be allowed to kill them. Or there's an environment difference. And there are some environments we just cannot survive in, right? But it doesn't mean we're less valuable because of it. Well, in the same way, the preborn child needs the environment of her mother's body and just can't survive outside of it for a while. It doesn't mean she's not valuable. And then there's dependency. And as you can see here, we even do have born humans that are dependent on someone else's body for their survival in the case of a breastfeeding infant. But it doesn't mean the infant may be killed because she's more dependent than us. Well, in the same way, the preborn child, yes, is more dependent than us and is dependent on her mother's body. But it doesn't mean that she should be allowed to be killed. So as we can see from this, our size or development, environment, or dependency may tell us something about us, but shouldn't be the determining factor for whether we live or not. If you think for a moment about why this preborn child is smaller than a born child, why she's in her mother's body, ultimately it boils down to one thing: her age. Why is this child at 11 weeks in the mother's body? Because in our species at that age, that's where you should be. Why does this preborn child need her mother's body to live? Because in our species at that age, that's what you need. Why is this preborn child significantly smaller than us? Because in our species at that age, that's the size you should be. Why is the preborn less developed than us and maybe can't feel pain yet? Because in our species at that age, that's the developmental level you're at. I would say abortion ultimately boils down to age discrimination. If we say that we can kill them because they're smaller or in their mother's bodies, we're picking on them because of how old they are. And since when do those of us who are older have a right to kill those who are younger? Since when do those of us who are older have a right to kill those who are younger? Now, some people might object at that point and say, well, the reason that we can have abortions is that even if the preborn are humans, maybe they're not persons. And so what sometimes happens in the abortion debate is those two words get divorced from each other. And I would argue, as I'll explain in a moment, that we should be able to use the term human and person interchangeably, that we should be able to say this is a room full of humans or a room full of people, and either would be accurate. But what some people want to do is say, well, a fetus maybe is human, but it's not a person. So we have to ask ourselves, well, gosh, what is a person? If we were to try to formulate a definition of person, what would that definition be? So I decided to start asking people how they would define person. And admittedly, I decided to start quite young. I started with my niece, Monica. And just before she turned 3, I asked Monica how she would define person. And I'd like to play for you her response. Hey, Monica, what's a person?
No matter a person, the person, no matter how small.
That's brilliant. Who taught you that?
Mommy tells the person here the crew.
That's right. Are you a person?
No.
You're not?
I'm a girl.
Are girls not people? Are boys people?
No.
Well, then who's a person?
You.
So as you can see, my niece is not developed enough to truly comprehend what a person is or be quite logical, because if girls are not people, and if I'm a person, then it doesn't follow logically that I could be a girl. So she still needs to work some stuff out. So I decided to increase the age of people I asked that question to. And I was once talking to a group of grade 7 students. And I said, I want you to imagine I'm an alien from another planet who's come to Earth for the first time. And as I hear you Earthlings talk about people, I don't know what people are. So I ask you, what is a person? How would you define it for me? And this one guy in the front row raised his hand right away. He goes, well, a person is someone with 2 arms and 2 legs. Really? I said, that's interesting, because this guy, who I told you guys about a moment ago, Nick Vujicic, was born without arms and legs. Is he a person? I asked the students. Yes, they all agreed. Well, then the definition of person can't be having arms and legs, because he doesn't have them, and he's a person. So what's a person? So this other student in the class raised his hand. He goes, well, a person is someone with feelings, someone who can feel things. Really? I said, well, because this little girl, Gabby Gingras, has a very rare condition where she cannot feel pain. In fact, as a baby who was teething, she chewed her tongue like it was bubblegum, and she bit her fingers until they bled. And she never felt pain to tell her to stop doing those things. Is Gabby a person? I asked. Yes, they all agreed. Well, then the ability to feel pain can't be our definition of a person. What's a person? And this student near the front raised her hand. She goes, well, a person is someone who can think and talk. Really, I said, because my nephew Francis, when he was born, couldn't think or talk, and he's still working on that because he calls Auntie Steph Auntie Tet. Does it mean he's not a person because he can't think or talk? At least very well. They said, no, he's a person. So I said, so what is a person? And then I noticed near the back of the room there was this girl kind of frantically waving her arm trying to get my attention. And I said, yes, how would you define person? And she was really exasperated. She says, look, It's really easy to figure out if someone is of the species Homo sapiens, and if they are, then they're a person. And then I asked her if I could take her to universities with me, because I found her smarter than often the professors I debate. But indeed, she was onto something. And what she was onto was that the only thing we have in common is our human nature. And if we define person as being a member of the human family, then everyone's safe. But if we define person as human plus some ability or feature, having arms and legs, or feeling pain, or being a certain size, then guess what? Somebody gets left out. We have discrimination. In this case, with abortion, we have age discrimination. So the only thing we have in common is our human nature. And by virtue of being members of the human family, we should be considered persons to be protected under the law. So I've made the case for the preborn being alive, for them being human, for them being persons. We know they're like us. We know they're equal to us. The question now is abortion something which hurts them? Is abortion something which kills them? And if it is, then just as it would be wrong for someone to randomly come in here and kill 3 of us, it would equally be wrong to kill the preborn child. So does abortion kill? If we look at the evidence of what abortion is, it's very clear that abortion is an action which dismembers, decapitates, and disembowels the body of a baby. In fact, early in pregnancy, when a majority of abortions happen, there's a procedure called a suction abortion, where a suction tube is inserted into the woman's uterus, and the suction machine turned on, and the power of the suction pulls the baby out, typically in pieces. Or there's a dilation and curettage where the woman's cervix is opened up and sharp instruments are put into her uterus, and the baby is scraped out piece by piece. Or there's a dilatation and evacuation later in pregnancy, where the cervix is opened up and bigger instruments are put in, and because the doctor can't see on the inside, he goes by how he feels, and so he takes his instrument and he grasps a part, and he yanks it and he pulls it out. There's an arm. And the instrument goes back in and he grasps something, yanks it, pulls it out, there's a leg. But then what sometimes happens when he goes in is there's something really big. And it's got bone spicules in it. And if he just pulls it out, those bone spicules can cut the woman's cervix and hurt her. So what they do when they feel that big thing with their instrument is they take it and they crush it and they rotate, and then they pull out the head. Or there's a dilation and extraction where late in pregnancy the baby has turned upside down, so its head should come out first. But with the dilation and extraction, the baby's turned around so its head is up. And then the baby is pulled out by its feet, but the head is kept in. And then a sharp instrument is put into the back of the baby's neck to cut. So a tube can be put in to suck the brains out so the head collapses and the baby's delivered dead. Why is that allowed? Because part of the baby's in the mother's body. And if your environment is the mom's body, then you may be killed in Canada. Do you know why I described abortion to you the way I did? Because there are adults who want to hide the truth from you. There are people of a generation where the generation made abortion legal. And people like you and me were born after that. We were born after 1969. We were born, maybe some, obviously you guys not me, born after 1988, where laws came in to make abortion legal. And there are people older than us who are part of the generation which brought abortion in legally, who don't want you and me, who are survivors, to know what abortion does. And that's not fair, to keep the facts hidden from us. So why did I describe abortion to you? Because 30 minutes ago, I was told I couldn't play a video for you that I played for the first group. Because there are adults that want to hide the truth from you. And that's not fair. You have a right to the truth. There is a superintendent that wanted to keep the truth from you in its visual form. And that broke my heart. Because I have met women that had abortions because nobody told them what it looked like. I was once standing on the street with my friends, and we were talking to people in Calgary about abortion and showing them what it looked like. And I noticed a girl walking on the crosswalk onto the sidewalk, and what you're seeing is exactly what she was staring at. And I walked up to her and I said, "What do you think about abortion?" And her reaction was to describe it. "Oh my gosh, it has fingers and toes. It has rib cages." "Yeah," I said, "and that's just in the first trimester when the majority of abortions happen." And then I noticed her eyes began to fill with tears. And I was worried that she may have had an abortion. And I didn't want to leave her to suffer alone. And I knew that being confronted with the reality of abortion isn't what brought her pain, but rather having an abortion is what brought her pain. That was the trauma, and that facts may just act as triggers. So to try to draw out of her whether she'd had an abortion so that I could try to minister to her, I said, "Do you know anyone who's had an abortion?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "I know people too." And then at that moment she turned and said, "I have to go," and she started to walk down the road really quickly. And my heart broke because again I felt like she'd had one. So I walked to my friend Anita, who's holding her "I regret my abortion" sign. A courageous witness who realizes while she can't undo the past and bring her child back, she can change the future by doing in the present moment what she wished she'd done in the past, which is to speak up for children. And I ran to Anita. I said, "Anita, quickly, can you give me one of your business cards?" And she has these business cards with a phone number that women can call toll-free to have someone listen to them and counsel them if they regret their abortion. And so she was searching for her card. By the time she got it, this girl was a block away. So I'm running down the road after this girl. And I'm calling out to her. I said, excuse me, and she stopped. I said, "I just want to give you this card for your friends." I said, "If any of them regret their abortion or want to talk to someone, this may help them." And the tears that I had seen earlier that had filled her eyes were streaming over down her cheeks. And so I very gently said, "Did you have one?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "May I hug you?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "I am sorry for your loss." And then she said something to me I hope no woman is ever able to say again. But many women will be able to say what she said because of some adults who want to hide the truth in its visual form. She said to me, "Nobody told me it looked like that." She made the choice she did 4 months earlier because nobody told her it looked like that. So guess what? If we withhold the evidence that we have that could save a life, that girl's sin of commission becomes our sin of omission. Her sin of action to end a life becomes our sin of inaction by not presenting the evidence that will save a life. And I can't live with the blood on my hands. So I want to encourage all of you to remember this website, endthekilling.ca. Because on that website, you can see the full truth that some people want to keep hidden from you. And because I don't think that's right, because I know that's not right, I'm giving you the chance to see for yourselves. How many of you have watched Kony 2012? The whole theme of Kony 2012 and the organization which created it is what? Invisible children. Invisible children. That there are children in other parts of the world who are being raped, who are being disfigured, who are being turned into soldiers, who are being turned into killers. And because they're invisible, no one's stopping it. So what does Kony 2012 do? Make them visible so it stops. The aborted children are Canada's invisible children. And because you and I are survivors of that, because we lived in our mother's wombs in a time when abortion was legal, because that could have happened to us, we have the responsibility to stand up and speak for them and show their last story. And their last story is what happened to them. And when we do that, do we have to be merciful? Of course. One of the people who inspires me, as you'll recall, is Jesus, whose whole life was oriented towards forgiving our sins. With 100,000 abortions every year in Canada, with 3 million since its legalization, that's a lot of women who are hurting. And who are those women? Maybe they're our moms. Maybe they're our sisters, our friends. Maybe they're our teachers. Maybe they're even us. And it's important to remember that while we have to condemn the action of abortion, that there is always hope for people who have had abortions. And that hope is that if we run to the cross, God is eager and He is willing to forgive. How many of you know the song Amazing Grace? Keep your hands raised if you know the name of the man who wrote it. And most of the hands go down. His name was John Newton. And he was a slave ship captain. And he would go to Africa. And he would take people from their homes. And he would bring them to ships and he would beat them. And put them in the ship. And down in the bottom of the ship, they would be packed in like cargo. And then be taken to a plantation where they would be brutally tortured for the rest of their lives. And eventually John Newton realized he was a sinner who was hurting people. He stopped his sinful ways, became a Christian, wrote the song Amazing Grace, and became a pastor. And once someone came up to him and said, how can you, someone like you, who was enslaved 22,000 of his fellow human beings, call yourself a pastor? And John Newton looked at that man and he said, I know only two things. That I'm a great sinner and Christ is a great Savior. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. If someone like John Newton can be forgiven and transformed, then so too can anyone who's hurt and killed innocent lives be forgiven and transformed. Having said all of that, upon receiving this information, sometimes people will say, okay, I know that the preborn are alive, I know they're human, I know they're persons, I know abortion kills, therefore I won't have one, but I can't force my views on other people. And I want to examine, just briefly, the idea that we can't force our views on other people. And I want to examine that by considering this bowl of jelly beans. Let's imagine it's a regular bowl of jelly beans, and I could tell you that my favorite flavors are black and red. But wouldn't it be unreasonable for me to say to you, because I choose black and red, you can only choose black and red, and I'm going to force my views on you, and no green or yellow or pink for you? Would it be unreasonable for me to say that? Yes. But let's imagine this isn't an ordinary bowl of jelly beans. Let's imagine that within these jelly beans, some of them have poison. And if you eat them, it'll kill you. So if I go out into the hallway and I start saying to Susan, hey, would you like some jelly beans? Would you like some jelly beans? Should you try to stop me? Yes. Why? Because now the choice I'm making is lethal. So when a choice is being made that is lethal to an innocent human being, then we do have a responsibility to not only be personally against that action, but actively against it to try to stop other people. Would it make sense to say, I'm personally against rape, I think it's awful. However, if you want to go rape someone, go do it. We wouldn't say that. Well, neither should we say, I'm personally against killing an innocent human being. But if you want to, it's okay. Now, some people may feel that maybe abortion is justified, though, out of fear, because they're thinking, my mom's going to kill me. Now, if this pregnant girl goes to her mom and tells her she's pregnant, will her mom actually physically kill her? No. Would it be wrong if her mom did? If you knew her mom was going to, should you try to stop her mom? Yeah. Now, if this girl has an abortion, will that actually physically kill her child? Yes. So we can look at this picture another way. And if it's wrong for this girl's mom to kill her because she's unexpectedly pregnant, why would it be okay for this teenage mom to kill her preborn child because she's unexpectedly pregnant? Now someone may say, well, because it's hard. And so I think a good place to end is where I began, by talking about inspiring people. Inspiring people do the right thing, no matter how hard it is. And a month and a half ago, I was privileged to meet a beautiful young woman who inspires me greatly. And I will let this short video clip tell her story about how she risked much and faced great hardship, but was willing to face it all in order to do the right thing.
Pierre, and I'm 21. I have a boy. Yeah. Watching all that unfold, them becoming little people from it's nothing to these little people who talk back to you. Yeah. Those are the priceless moments of, it's hard, I'm not gonna lie. But it's all worth it. I was 2017 when I got pregnant, and the father of my child wanted me to get an abortion. And I thought about it, and I pictured in my life how easier it would be to go through school and get my education, do what I want, and I pictured that. But I don't know, at the end I just couldn't, kill my baby. I knew it was a baby, I was so young and I didn't know much, but I knew it was a baby and I didn't want to kill my baby. And I hated anyone who would tell me to, you're only 16, everybody had an opinion, but I know the decision that I made and I know the consequences, which was my baby, getting pregnant. It's your action. You can't hit a redo button and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't want the baby. And it was a really hard decision because, all my friends, I had all my friends who went away to college, who was doing all these great things. And I was, at home with the baby. Actually, until this day, I don't talk to my father. It was just so hurt that, I got pregnant the baby. And you know, I hated him for wanting me to get an abortion. And it's like, if you didn't want me to have the baby, if you wanted me to kill the baby, then you don't want the baby, you know. So you don't want me. My mom passed away when I was young, when I was 2. So I'm the only girl, so I have 5 brothers who I'm just now talking to because they stopped talking to me too. Well, I seeked help. You know, I went to a program called Lifeline Family Centers, who is located here, and they're pro-life. And you know, they helped me. And then there was this nice couple who was there. Their name is, you know, Mary Masters. And they were house parents at the program, and when they were leaving the program, they asked me if I wanted to come with them. And I said yes, and they've been helping me for the past 3 years. And now they have a program started themselves. It's called A New Beginning for single moms, encouraging single moms, like parenting classes, cooking classes, teaching them how to be a mother to their child. Ask God for direction. And you know, a lot of people is going to have a lot of opinions, but ultimately they have to do what's right. You know, if everybody did what was right instead of what they wanted to do, I feel like the world would be a better place. And they might not see it now, but their child is going to add value to their life. I'd have to say Mother Teresa, because she's awesome. I mean, when I think of the definition of a woman or like strong, I always think of Mother Teresa. And I have to say, like, my adoptive parents, Bill and Mary Masters, they have like showed me so much, and I have grown to like be a better person, a better mother, because they, you know, they gave me values.
16, pregnant, her own mother's dead, abandoned by her boyfriend, abandoned by her father, abandoned by her brothers. And yet, what did she say? I seeked help. And if everyone did what was right instead of what they wanted to do, I think the world would be a better place. And that is the challenge that I leave with each one of you. Whether you ever face an unplanned pregnancy or know someone who does, that in the midst of that hard, difficult crisis, you do the right thing to make the world a better place. And I am confident that you, being the survivor generation who has only known legal abortion, has the energy and the enthusiasm to boldly proclaim truth to our culture so that we end the killing in our lifetime and make the world a better one than the world the older adults have given us. So go and do the right thing, and I believe in you. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Again, thank you everyone. Thank you to the teachers for bringing their classes down. Don't forget, during lunch, if you have questions or comments or anything, we will be here during lunchtime. Period 4, unless you're in class and your teacher won't yet come, we are having a baby shower to actually celebrate life. This is why we do not have abortions. We are pro-life. We have a place, just like Nadesha found. It's called the Shifter Home right here in Burlington, where moms, young moms, can go to get help. And we've got 1, maybe even 2, that are going to come with their baby and show us, yes, it's hard, but yes, there is help for us. And we thank you to everyone at Holy Trinity who has brought gifts to help support these moms. If you need help, ask for help. People make mistakes. Yes, true. Don't make a second one, which is worse than the first one. Get help. Okay? We are the Titans for Life. We are here at the school. If anybody ever has any questions, comments, anybody wants to talk to me, My name, Professor Silvestri. The Titans for Life are also here. You can always come and talk to them. Okay? Okay. Thanks again. Hold on.
On behalf of all the staff and students at Holy Trinity, as well as the Titans for Life pro-life group, we would like to thank you so much for coming to our school and giving us this very informative presentation. So, thank you.
If anybody wants one of our awesome t-shirts, we're selling them outside. They're $15. Okay? Teachers, should we go back to period 2?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Please go back to your period 2 classes. Thank you again.